Tardiness is the hardest part. Not because of the fear or the nuance that will get lost on some, but because where does one even begin? It's here, where I am now. Hi, my name is CJ. I'm fine with any pronouns that you feel comfortable using for me, so long as it's done respectfully. And this video is going to touch on some deeply nuanced topics. I might go off track every now and then, but I'm going to try my best to keep my focus on where I am currently, how I got here, and where I'm going. If it looks like I'm reading from a script, it's because I kind of am. I wrote out the things that I want to say so that I don't go out on side tangents that could honestly probably be their own videos. Sorry if it makes what I'm saying feel just a little less genuine, but here we are. So, I'm gonna sound so pretentious in this video. I am someone who has struggled with this question basically since I was aware enough of the world to understand that my interests weren't going to be celebrated by everyone, let alone accepted. I have ADHD, I have trauma from my parents, so I grew up trying to make myself as palatable to everyone that I came across, and as much as possible. Problem is, I'm now in my early 30s, and I could only tell you that I really liked Pokemon as a child. I was illiterate until Harry Potter, and I love a good story game, but that's about it. I grew up in a family of tomboys outside of my sister, and that again is one of those other videos. But being a tomboy that, you know, defied gender roles was definitely celebrated far more than being the girly girl that my sister definitely was. I came out as bisexual at around, I think, like 14, and then I kind of danced between coming out as bisexual or lesbian for literally the next like 15 years of my life. The main reason for that was that I was very afraid to solidify an identity, because if I stumbled across somebody that was in disagreement with my identity or didn't like it, I could later be like, oh no, you were totally right, like I was so wrong, that's actually not what I am, I'm this. The secondary reason I realized way later is that the world is still incredibly lesbophobic, and at the time I was one of the biggest lesbophobes, I think. My idea of a lesbian was either the hyper femme Barbie, you know, girly girl, or the stone butch with a buzz cut. I didn't see a lot of lesbian rep that was kind of like a middle ground, which is where I think I felt comfortable with. And if I did see sort of like just a generic woman that didn't look like a lesbian, well, I knew one thing though, I did not want to be a butch lesbian, because I definitely was deeply lesbophobic. At like 16 or 17, I carried that idea that if you are going to date a girl that just looks like a boy, why wouldn't you just date a boy? I would consider it the like pick-me version of lesbianism. I hadn't decentered men yet. In fact, basically all of my friends, a lot of them anyways, were men. And looking back, they were just guys that wanted to try to swing me straight. The problem then was, if I didn't want to be butch, then my only option in my head was to be femme, which meant knowingly breaking this perceived idea that my family didn't like femmes and that femmes were bad, or rather feminine hobbies and such were bad. Feminine people and feminine lesbians were obsessed with makeup and their hair and their clothes and how they looked. And my family was not about that. And in fact, my sister was, and got kind of bullied relentlessly for being that kind of girl. So in my head, they were very vain and everything I hated, because I hated what my parents hated so that they would like me, and I didn't want them not to like me. Ultimately, what happened is I took the label of gay as opposed to bisexual or lesbian, and I kind of refused to partake in queer culture. I dated a girl who came to me saying she was bisexual, but to everybody else she would say she was bi-curious, and she taught me what the bisexual rule was. non-consensually, repeatedly. And when I would break up with her, she would threaten to harm herself or fully unalive. Which resulted in me staying in that relationship because I felt like it would be my fault if anything happened. And then I dated a girl that I didn't even like, but who was really interested in me. And I needed to validate my queerness somehow at the time. So yeah, teenager me sucked. I'm really not proud of her. And I'm really glad that I'm not that way now, but that is the reality of my queer identity at the time. And then after that, I got into my first ever serious relationship. And that's really where this whole ordeal kind of began. I know all of that probably sounds so redundant to transitioning and detransitioning and what happened and why, but my childhood being as anti-feminine as it was, combined with where my transition started, is the key to this whole melting pot, I think. There's a lot of people out there that want to claim that being transgender is a mental illness and that it can be cured. And they use people like me who have detransitioned or are in the process of detransitioning as proof. So I needed all of that context to set up my argument against the transphobes regarding my experience, which is, of course, that I was never actually transgender. I don't think I should count as that 1% in that study of people that detransition, because I don't believe that my life and my experience was one that was transgender. It was one that was deeply traumatized and just needed some therapy. At 19 years old, so about 2011, I lived in Lorain, Ohio. I was attending community college and I was glued to a TV show that was also set in Ohio. Maybe you've heard of it. It was called Glee. And in 2011, there was a website that was just the coolest fucking thing to me. A place for creative people to hop online, talk to each other, share their art and photography, their skills on different aspects of art. They could rant, they could vent, and they can partake in something called roleplay. I'm talking about Tumblr. If you don't know what roleplaying is, it's kind of like communal writing. You can either pick a character from your favorite TV show, or make an original character not attached to anything at all, or an original character attached to a TV fandom that you like. And you kind of interact and write scenes like from books and such, but with other people online. It's kind of like a text-based D&D campaign, sort of, but it was genuinely like my favorite hobby out there. I was deep in the Glee RP fandom. I played Rachel or Quinn mostly. Quinn has been, always will be, my favorite character, and Faberry will be the ship that I will never let die. Anyways, I met someone online through this hobby. We talked and got to know each other, flirted even, and next thing I know, we're on Skype at all hours of the day. He's making me feel important and making me feel seen and welcome and just all of these things. We're so incredibly compatible, like right off the bat. I mentioned that I was thinking of going into criminal studies in college because I wanted to be a detective at the time. This has since changed as I deconstructed and faced my white privilege, among other historical events that have happened. And she shares with me that she's actually in the academy doing whatever it is they do. Honestly, it's been years. I don't really remember exactly what they did. But we have a shared interest in criminal minds, and we even have the same book about serial killers and how people develop antisocial personality disorder through abuse and other things that have happened to them, and etc., etc. I bring all this up because she was the very first person that ever took an interest in my interests first, and that ever made me feel safe to pick an interest and stick with it. You know, something that I specifically was interested in for sure, and let me run with it. And also shared that interest with me, as opposed to me sharing an interest with somebody else and not knowing if it's because I actually liked it or because I wanted them to like me. So naturally, one thing leads to another and we start a long distance relationship. We do that for a couple months. We visit each other, and then she hits me with the, I don't think I can do this anymore. I need you to either move across the country down to Florida in with me, or we have to break up. My entire world shuts down because this person that I've put all of my interests into, that has helped me feel like a whole person, that I didn't have to pretend to like certain things for them to want me around, is threatening to leave. My mind goes into overdrive. I'm trying to figure out how to save this, how to move without having a job, without my family being mad at me, how to go to college, how I'm going to find a job. It's a million things at once, but I don't have to worry about most of them, because in that same conversation, she mentions that there's already a job lined up and available for me at the school that her mom works at. An after-school program type of thing where I watch over kids, help them with homework, and basically just babysit. And by this point in the relationship, I had already talked about changing gears and maybe going into education instead of criminal studies. So it was kind of perfect. And then for college, she already checked, you know, the requirements for FIU, and I would be great for that. And I would have a job to be able to afford the loans I would definitely need to take out in order to go there. But what about the living situation? Well, it's not a problem because her parents are totally fine with me moving in with them as well. So all I need to worry about is just getting down there. Now, anyone with eyes that aren't blinded by love bombing can very clearly see something is wrong here, but I do it anyways. I break a bond with my dad, another story for another day. I lie to my mom and say that I'm definitely going to be flying back, and I just move in. The next 3 years follows to a T what happens with an average case of emotional abuse. The job she said that was available wasn't ready yet, and when it is, she takes it. The college situation falls through. I can't get financial aid because my parents make too much, but my parents also won't help me with college because I betrayed their trust. I don't have a job to be comfortable to take out loans. I can't visit friends because she doesn't know them and she has trauma from getting cheated on. I can't visit my family because they want to come between us and keep me away from her and convince me to break up with her and stay away. I can't buy an energy drink from the store without asking her because I don't have a job and she doesn't want her money going towards that. But I also can't use my own money when I do get a job because she's worried about my health and has a full mental breakdown on public transit when I say I can't wait to get a job so I can buy one with my money. Because how dare I say that it's my money and not our money? And how dare I not have buying an energy drink be a joint decision made together because she's so worried about my health? And during all of this, I'm dressing more girly. I'm exploring dresses. I'm experimenting with hair products for my long wavy hair. I'm putting on different types of eyeliner and makeup, but I also hold doors open for her and I pull her chair out. And she starts to say that she loves how masked I am. And this continues and continues until I start to notice that she's so much nicer to me when I act more mask. She has more fun on dates when I act more mask. She's less insecure when I act more mask. She feels closer and better about our relationship when I am more mask. So I lean into it a little more. Things are great when I'm masculine, and I start to think that I really like it. There's always this voice at the back of my head that's saying that something's not right, that I'm being mistreated, that this might be abusive. But all of her friends seem to love her, and our fights are always my fault. And everyone talks about how cute of a couple we are together. Then I start to grow close to people at work, and they start to notice things. James is the first to call her out. We're out late, hanging out with him and his girlfriend Sammy at Sammy's apartment, And he can tell that I just want to go all out. I want to drink and party and have fun and turn my brain off because I've never really gotten to do that. He knows that I wanted to try pot, but that because of Alexis, I'm not allowed to. And for the first time ever in my entire relationship with Alexis, I watched someone turn to her, call her a bitch, and say that she is too controlling. Needless to say, we weren't allowed to be friends after that. Fuck. But it rocked my world. I felt so vindicated. I felt heard. I felt freed somehow. At least free enough to really start taking those rose-tinted glasses off. And even though I was starting to think, maybe I am being abused, I was still convincing myself that I enjoyed being masked, not realizing that I enjoyed the peace that being masked was giving in my relationship. Near the end of it, I had cut my hair short, solely wore sports bras, and I only dressed in boy clothes. But I was also openly talking to Alexis about my mental health, how I felt suicidal, how I felt depressed, how I just wasn't happy in life. And she laughed and said that I needed to get some hobbies. But I learned not to tell her about my feelings anymore, and instead I started to go out on walks. We lived close enough to the beach that I could walk there in just about 10 or 15 minutes. And one day, someone on the street asked if I had a lighter and called me sir, and didn't flinch when I spoke, and still clocked me as a boy when they left. Someone saw me as anyone but the girl that fell for a now clear to me abusive relationship. Now, I didn't think that at the time. All I thought was, wow, hearing someone refer to me as a boy feels really good actually. And I ruminated on that over and over again for days. What got me to leave that relationship was something I still to this day don't know if I took correctly. But one night while Alexis was at work, I got a DM on Tumblr from her best friend at the time. It was a website to this like help crisis center, I guess, webpage something or other for LGBTQ plus people specifically that were being abused by their partner and needed help getting out or counseling or what have you. The problem was it was for POC people, and the friend that sent it was a Black woman. So I wasn't sure if this was like a sign, if she was trying to say something with it, or if she was just like, hey, maybe you should share this link for the people that follow you. Or maybe she thought I was abusing Alexis. So I asked like, oh, what is this? What's this for? And all she said was that she thought it was a really interesting link, and then nothing else. I escaped a few days later. Unfortunately, I escaped with that seed having been planted that I could be seen as someone who wasn't the version of myself that fell for it, that didn't question my ex when it came to light that she was never in the police academy, that she lied about having multiple degrees, that didn't question when she took the job that was supposedly slated for me, that didn't bat an eye when I was being isolated from the friends that I had in Florida from previously living here. No, I could be seen as someone else completely. And being trans was not the hot ticket item that it currently is. But anyways, I moved back with my parents who were living in San Diego at the time and started my transition. I did go to therapy, but I also went to a therapist that was a cis gay man who had no experience as a woman, let alone a lesbian who grew up in a world not at all catered to women. One of our sessions was quite literally just him giving advice on how to grocery shop and how to get groceries for just $50. Another session, he got very visibly offended when I said and questioned what jock straps were needed for outside of sports, and I don't even remember what this topic started with, but he explained that he specifically uses it during sex with his partner in therapy to someone who is just entering a phase of life. It was just weird. It was weird. It was not a good therapy session. There were also a lot of red flags that I see as red flags now that were glossed over. Like my continual questions every single session if it was normal to feel like I was grieving my womanhood. Of course I was, he'd say. That's who got you through everything to get to right now. I asked other trans men about it, and they also said something similar. Or if they didn't feel that way, it was because that they knew that they were trans since they were a kid. Everyone's experience was different. And so I just thought that this was my experience and that it would be different when I got used to it or was on T long enough. I just thought that one day it would get better. And it did, technically. I benefited from male privilege, so where I would be taken seriously, where people didn't doubt my knowledge, where I was taken at face value. What I said actually mattered finally. I didn't put it together until much later that this was literally just because I was physically presenting as a man. I had a beard, I had a deeper voice, and it wasn't because I was growing a confidence in myself because I was living as my authentic self. I also don't solely blame Alexis for my decision to transition, but I do blame the abuse that she put me through as the catalyst that kind of got me there, or rather planted that seed to begin with. In the many years since that relationship, I've had to work through and process a lot. And it was only in 2021, after about 5 years on T and a few years off, and a full hysterectomy and stealthing as a man, that I even started to question if I should detransition. At first it was watching The Owl House and other shows that showed representation of such clear sapphic characters that existed sort of outside of my perceived only options. Then it was watching sapphic YouTubers like Amy Scott, Rose and Rosie, listening to lesbian music more, actually partaking in queer and lesbian culture as a whole, which I had been running from since coming out. But even then I kept going back and forth. Struggled with trying to figure out if I was defaulting to a side of me that other people found more palatable and socially acceptable, or if I actually wanted this for myself. I would see videos of other trans guys missing the community that women build for themselves on TikTok, and they would miss the womanhood with that, but still know who they were and get confused all over again because, is that what I was feeling? I think what brought me to a place of complete eye-opening realization was this current very weird and off-putting trend of bisexual women being deeply lesbophobic and how they go about talking about their relationships with men, or rather describing how much better and softer and fun and easier it is. Watching people rally behind JoJo emotionally cheating on public TV on her girlfriend. Seeing JoJo blame the lesbian community that welcomed her so passionately and so wholeheartedly for pushing this identity onto her. The absolute minefield that was Fletcher and this super weird trad wife thing she had going on for a moment. And most recently, the Betty Who situation. Using a known feminine looking lesbian who has been very vocal about being a lesbian to say she would hold space if she ever fell in love with a man. It's all built up into this deep rooted pride I didn't know that I had in being a lesbian. I love loving women. I love my wife. She's everything to me. She has given me so much tender love and support, space and freedom. She's let me be broken. She's let me be exactly who I wanted to be. No questions asked, just pure acceptance and unconditional love. I love living a life where I get to now experience queer culture. I love that a sapphic woman had the largest crowd at Lollapalooza in history, if I'm not mistaken. I love that blue-collar men were posting TikToks to themselves, dancing and laughing and having a blast listening and singing to Pink Pony Club. And if Renee Rapp ever sees this part, I might die, but maybe a little part of me kind of hopes that she does, because it would mean a lot to be able to say this to her, but I don't know, we'll side table that. But I am also so eternally grateful for the rant that she put out on her live about being a lesbian and coming out as a lesbian, and what it was like to use bisexuality as a label, as like a safety net. I'm grateful for her style. I'm grateful for the way that she is so unapologetically a lesbian, and I'm so fucking grateful for her music. Something about seeing a woman dressing the way I used to dress when I thought that lesbianism was a two-option choose your character with only two extreme examples, Barbie femme or G.I. Joe butch, just has been so freaking wonderful. And she made a fire song that I get to listen to as I work through the abuse that my ex put me through, that I've been keeping tucked under a gender-shaped lock and key. That is, if you can believe it, the short version of how I got to the point that I'm at today. I left out the parts where I started to really dig into working on myself and working on figuring out what I liked and all of that fluff, because I feel like that can kind of be its own video, talking and discussing identity and the importance of representation and healing and etc, etc, etc. Where I'm going now kind of starts with this channel. I've posted on and off over the many years since 2016. I've deleted and privated and abandoned it multiple times over. I've shared my tea journey. I've also declared that I wasn't trans in some of my super early videos. I've followed the path of other YouTubers that I looked up to, but I've never made content I'm happy with or really cared much about. Gaming content right now kind of feels like low-hanging fruit for me. I don't have to do much work. I just have to react to what's happening on screen. And I don't have to be skilled at the game because failing can be funny and entertaining. But I owe it to myself to care and to be honest with who I am and to face the fact that I'm in my early 30s after spending all of this time catering to other people so that they'll like me. And I owe it to myself to reclaim who I truly think that I am and believe myself to be. I deserve to be seen, even if it's cringe, even if it's hard, even if it's scary. I don't know entirely what this channel is going to be. I'm probably going to change the username, private a bunch of videos again, who fucking knows, honestly. But I wanted to make it clear again that this video is not intended to hurt the trans community. I will stand by you. I will fight for you. This community gave me a home when I was at my most broken and shattered version of myself. And I don't want to see any of you ugly ass TERFs in the comments either. I'm not with you. Go back to your fucking caves. I don't know. You're not welcome here. And to anyone else that is questioning their gender identity or their transition or anything like that, a space that I lurk every now and again is the actual detrans Reddit subreddit. There's so many stories there from people that have had similar experiences, are questioning themselves, or even people that just can't afford to stay on hormones and medically transition, or don't feel safe to socially transition. It's also an anti-TERF space, and they're pretty strict about that and very good at deleting and banning people for that specifically. So if you need a place to vent, to ask questions and seek help or guidance of some sort, that was an amazing space for me and resource even. And lastly, I'm hoping that other people that are detransitioning and are not TERFs feel safe to share their stories as well. I know for me, the scariest part was feeling so fucking alone and like I was betraying an entire community of people that already are under so much heat right now. My voice is not welcome as a means to attack or discredit or invalidate that community. I love them and cherish them and believe that all trans people are deserving of basic human rights because they're human beings. That said, if you've made it this far, thank you. I love you, I am rooting for you, and I hope that you do something great today.